What it do, Dream Team? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with the top 10 most important moments in British history. Before we can dive in, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell, give the video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. Let's do this.
Are you ready for a history lesson? Welcome to Watch Mojo UK, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 most important events in British history. Before we begin, if you enjoy this video, please subscribe for more great content. For this list, we're looking at some of the key moments that have propelled Britain forward in the last 1,000 years. Obviously, we can't cram a millennium's worth of history into one video, so don't be surprised if there are some significant events we haven't covered just yet. Number 10, the failure of the Commonwealth.
I will give this nation back its self-respect.
The Protectorate was a period that took place during the Commonwealth when England, Ireland and Scotland were under the rule of Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell and subsequently his son Richard Cromwell. This was the only time in history that England had republican rule. Monarchists refer to this period as the interregnum, a time when there was no ruler on the throne of England. This resulted in the Restoration, which took place the following year. The demise of the republican rule still allowed many of the recently established democratic institutions to remain, which have endured until modern times. Number 9, America.
Under republican rule with no ruler on the throne of England. I can't imagine the time. I guess I always thought there was a king or a queen. I didn't imagine time. So under this time, under the Cromwells, they were under republican and there was no ruler on the throne? Republican authority?
American colonies declare their independence.
We are chasing the bastards back to Boston, and we'll keep them there!
Prior to 1776, what we now know as the United States of America was simply a collection of 13 colonies on the east coast bordering the Atlantic. Residents there were becoming increasingly dissatisfied with the British rule and had been waging war on the Brits for more than a year. Finally, by the summer of 1776, all 13 of the colonies had agreed to segregate from England. Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence, which was then adopted by Congress. The American War of Independence was not yet finished, it would go on for another 5 years. Number 8, the Great Fire.
That one confused me on why that one made the list. Because that's a very important, probably number one most important moment in American history, but in British history where they had conquered so many countries, where so many countries gained their independence from Britain. That seems like just like a page in British history, but it doesn't. So it definitely doesn't seem like it'd be on the top 10 most important moments in British history. To America, number one, but to Britain, so many other countries gained independence. So that's just it'd be like just another day in their history, I'd assume.
Of London. In the summer of 1666, a blaze engulfed the city of London, destroying almost everything in its path. 13,200 houses were taken, as well as 87 churches. It's estimated that the vast majority of London residents lost their homes to the fire. Strangely, amid all this destruction, there were hardly any reports of deaths taking place due to the fire. Historians have established several reasons for this. Firstly, the deaths of commoners were not always recorded, and secondly, the bodies may have been completely incinerated, leaving no evidence of how many really perished. The city had to be entirely rebuilt, and some historians believe the fire was actually beneficial in a way because it eliminated many unsanitary and plague-infected buildings. Number 7, the Peasants Revolt.
So, first of all, can anybody tell me what actually started this fire? And then the fact that it ate so much, like 13,200 houses, 87 churches. And then we don't even know the death toll count because he said that commoners weren't always counted. And outside of that, the fire it could have incinerated anybody to where there was no trace of them to identify them left. Like, what started this London fire? If anybody knows, hit me in the comment section.
Is this some sort of peasant joke that I'm too rich to understand?
In the 14th century, British commoners had a lot to be upset about. The plague had recently wiped out a huge portion of the population, which meant that labourers were able to demand more money because workers were no longer so readily available. The government, however, set the Ordinance of Labourers, which cemented wages at the low amounts they were before the Black Death. They also levied a poll tax to fund the war against the French, which ate up even more of the peasants' wages. All of this led to the Great Rising of 1381, which had an impact on the 100 Years' War because authorities were not able to raise taxes for funding as they had for prior conflicts. Number 6, the Suffragette Movement is formed.
What would the vote mean to you, Mrs. Watts?
Though the women's suffrage movement had been underway for several years already, 1903 marked an important event in British history. The Women's Social and Political Union was created by Emmeline Pankhurst and others, which took direct action to further their goals. The First World War put a pause on suffrage campaigning, though there was still some progress. Many cite 1918 as the year that women in the UK gained the right to vote, but in fact, at that point it excluded women under the age of 30, as well as those who didn't independently own property. It was only a decade later in 1928 that all women were granted the right to cast a vote. Number 5.
That's very few women in 1918 gained the right to vote. Very few who didn't independently own property. So I'm assuming that's outside of a marriage. Their husband owning property and under the age of 30. That's crazy. 1928 was when all the women gained the right to vote. Absolutely incredible moment. And the Peasant Revolt, of course, the peasants had no choice to revolt. You were giving them nothing. Not only were they dying of the Black Plague, but they were also getting paid very cheap wages. And then you put a cap on how much they could make. And then you tax that. And then you tried to tax it to help fund something else, but you couldn't tax them anymore because they already. How can you tax nothing? Because that's what you were giving them.
The end of World War II. The entire period of the Second World War, ranging from 1939 to 1945, was evidently a remarkable time in the history of the United Kingdom. Of the many things that came of the war, one of the most notable was a push for a bigger and more intervening government. The welfare of people during wartime had become a government problem that was dealt with to the satisfaction of the population. A spirit of community-mindedness was also fostered by the difficult times of war, and the British people came out of the conflict with strengthened class relationships, which would lead to more left-leaning social policies moving forward. Number 4, Henry VIII severs ties with the church.
First of all, big shout out to the British in World War II. Y'all literally saved the world. Y'all were absolute key in defeating Hitler and them Germans, so y'all deserve as much appreciation and gratitude as anyone could show. Y'all did y'all thing.
For the church, this won't end well. I'm sending in my man Cromwell.
Henry VIII is probably most famous for his 6 wives, 2 of whom he had beheaded, and it was his desire to end his marriage with his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, that spurred on one of the key events in British history. Catherine was unable to give Henry the male heir he so needed, so he petitioned Pope Clement VII to annul his marriage. When he was refused, he took the radical step of severing ties with Rome and started the English Reformation. He named himself Supreme Head of the Church of England and was excommunicated from the Roman Catholic Church, though he always remained true to his Catholic upbringing.
Oh my God.
Number 3, the Magna
Carta. He said, if
Carta.
y'all ain't gonna let me goddamn annul my wedding, that's cool. Cutting ties, starting the English Reformation, putting myself as the head of the church. But why he had to behead 2 of his wives? He couldn't just leave and try to get them marriages annulled. Why did 2 of them get beheaded?
Carta was signed.
Without loyalty, there is no kingdom. There is nothing.
The Magna Carta, which can be translated to the Great Charter, is one of history's most revered and renowned documents. It was instituted by King John of England, and the premise behind it was to ensure that every citizen, including the monarchy, would be subject to the law of the land. Much of the text has been edited since its inception, and very few of the clauses remain in modern law, but nonetheless the Magna Carta is the basis of the British Constitution. Many principles represented in the document have been influential in bills of rights around the world. Number 2, the Battle of Waterloo.
You want to kill your emperor? Here I am.
On June 18th, 1815, Napoleon and his army marched to the Belgian village of Waterloo to fight against the Duke of Wellington and his army of Brits, Germans and Belgians. Napoleon made some critical strategic errors which led to his troops losing the battle. This victory for England marked the end of France's dominance in Europe and a return to the previous power Britain had exerted for centuries. The result of this conflict is thought to have an impact on world history as well, bringing in a period of relative peace, which allowed for technical innovations and prosperity.
Look
Number
at all
1, the Battle of
bodies.
Hastings.
My God. So France was most powerful for a moment in time. They had the power. And then the Battle of Waterloo was when British took that power back, won, and said, we on top of the hill again.
Nearly 1,000 years ago, the face of England was forever changed. In a battle won by William the Conqueror, the Anglo-Saxon King Harold was killed with an arrow through the eye. The outcome of the Battle of Hastings impacted British life, culture and language in innumerable ways. The language of official documents became Latin, but of even more impact was the influence of the French language over English, especially in the tradition of names. Traditional Anglo-Saxon names began to disappear in favour of French names that we today consider inherently English, like William, Henry and Robert. Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo UK and subscribe for more great...
Yeah, I feel like there's just so many moments in British history that were significant that it'd be hard to get them all, because I was looking for the Battle of Britain, but I guess you can put that in World War II, number 5. I was looking for the abolishment of slavery. I feel like there's a decent amount of things that they missed out, but they only have 10 spots. I just think America's Revolution shouldn't have been in one of those spots. That's all we have, though. Let me know what you guys think of the list, and if you enjoyed that reaction, make sure to also check this one out as well. It's your boy Neal, out.